Hello, I am Dr. Sonia Cunningham Leverett. Very happy to be back with our author interview series. And today we have with us a very special guest. He is none other than the Mr. Willie E. Dial Jr. Mr. Dial has published 4 children's books, and he is here to tell us the inspiration behind the books and just what he has planned for the future. It's going to be an exciting interview, so please hang around. I'm going to start with Mr. Dial just telling us who exactly he is.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mr. Willie E. Dow Jr. I'm from South Carolina. As you can see here, South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. um, let's see, what else can I say about myself? I spent 21 years in the military.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your patriotism. Um, there, I spent most of my time in Asia during that time. Believe it or not, I didn't do any authorship writing during that time. But I have been writing, but just not, published at all. I enjoy sports. Of course, I enjoy reading the Bible. I enjoy my good friends, um, and I enjoy eating. So I'm glad that this camera is just going to catch me from the chest up.
That is funny.
Yes,
Um,
ma'am.
but all of those experiences, I'm sure, give you topics to write about.
That's very true. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, that's very true.
And just from what I know of you, you're a very busy person. So how do you find time to write?
Well, most of my writing inspiration comes like on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning or something like that, or if I'm going walking during the afternoon. And it's not the whole thing doesn't hit me all at once. It's just like an idea will come and I
Mhm.
jot it down, or I could be talking to a friend and they'll say something and it'll spark an idea for me to write something. So yeah,
That's
that's.
awesome.
Mhm.
So when was it that you first said, I think I might want to publish. I'd like to be an author.
Oh, well, you know what? Actually, I that never crossed my mind. What happened was I had written something. I think it happened in, what year was that? 2009 or 10.
Okay.
I was in Japan at the time, and something happened. Actually, it was my first book. The little story behind that happened, and I just happened to write it all down. But I
Mhm.
didn't think of ever making it a book. It was just something that happened that, God gave me some revelation on something, and I just happened to write it down. And I kept it for years and years and years and years. And I was talking to a friend. I said, "Hey, what do you think about this? I'm thinking about just, getting it printed out and put it on my wall, like that." And they said, "Oh no, you should make this into a children's book." I was like, "Huh? I never thought about that." So, "Oh yeah, you should do it." Blah blah blah. So I reached out to you, and boom, boom, boom. My first book, I guess I can show it. It's called "The Least of These." This is the first book that I did, and
Awesome.
yeah, and basically what it's about is, okay. So at the time I was married and I had a stepdaughter, and it was in July. And so we was out looking for some lawn chairs, but it was July. But we went into the storage room and there was a whole bunch of Christmas stuff there, right? So I said, "What's all this Christmas junk?" And she said, "Daddy." I was like, "What?" She said, "But it's Jesus's birthday," right? And I said, "Well, if it's his birthday, why am I giving you a gift? I should be buying him a gift for his birthday, right?" So later on, it hit me that Jesus is the poor. He is the hungry, he is the thirsty. And those are the ones that on his birthday we should really be given to him during that time period. He said, "When you did it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me."
Mhm.
So I'm not against Christmas, of course, but I just think that we should focus more on the needy during that time period rather than, like how we normally do it. So I jotted all that stuff down, and then years later is when, like I told you, I let somebody read it, and they say you should make it into a children's book, and that's what I did, basically. Yep.
Wow. Well, this is news to me because I did not realize that that was based on a true story.
Based on a true story. As a matter of fact, 3 of the 4 books that I have written are based on true stories.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want me to go into that, I could tell you that too if you want to now.
Well, I know one of them that I know, from your background in high school that fits. So then the other two, maybe not so much so, but being an author myself, I know that when children ask me about my books, they're about me or somebody very close to me because authors write about what we know.
Right,
Sometimes we do, make it fictional. We may add some details and that type thing. We may change the names,
right,
but much easier to relate experiences that you've had that other people can learn from. So
right.
I certainly understand that. But yes, go ahead and show us the other books and tell us the inspiration behind those as well.
Well, the next one is called How Do I Know It's Wrong? So this one is one that did not happen, but it's just something that I was talking to a friend of mine, and they were talking about how somebody did them wrong, right? And I said, well,
Mhm,
what if that had happened to that person? How would they feel about it? You know what I mean? And they said, well, I'm sure they wouldn't like it. And so right away, it just hit me to create this situation where
mhm,
this little bad boy was like tearing up the neighborhood. He was, throwing rocks and you know tearing up people's bicycle. He was doing all kinds of stuff, right? But
mhm,
everything he did along the way, when he got back home, was done unto him. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So,
mhm, mhm.
so the story is talking about that. Basically, do unto others as you have others do unto you. So
Very powerful. And I love the litmus test. So if you're questioning whether something is wrong or not, just ask if that's done to you, how will you feel?
exactly right. And
Love
so I
it.
feel like the word tells you that train up a child in the way that he should go, and when they grow up they won't depart from it. So I feel like if they get these type little small lessons early, then
Mhm.
they won't do bad when they get older.
Exactly, exactly. Love it. So you are teaching character education in a very, very nice and special way with relevant stories that are timeless. The story may have been first, shared, or you may have first experienced it 15, 20, 30 years ago, but
Yeah,
it's still relevant.
that's very true. And so the third book is called Run Will Run, and it's about baseball. So I think I was around 14 years old.
Okay.
And it was just our team was pretty good, but we was playing this team that hadn't been beaten like 2 years. You know what I mean? They were really good, and they just
Mhm.
knew that they was gonna beat us. And I'm gonna tell you, man, I prayed and asked God, I said, could you help me? Because it was like the last inning of the game with 2 outs, and it was up to me. So basically, I'm not saying God helped me to win, but I assume my faith meant something because I was able to tie the game and then later
Oh,
end up winning the game. So that book is a story about how that happened. So when it really happened, um, like I said, I was 14. That was years and years, 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 years ago, a long time ago. But what I did was I went home and I wrote it all down. What happened in this ending, that ending, and how I was praying to God and asking Him to help me, whatever. And I left it in my drawer in my room. So my mom was being nosy and went into the drawer and read it and sent it into the newspaper.
oh,
So the newspaper published that story as I wrote it on the paper, right?
oh,
And it was
wow.
called A Refreshing Note from Youth, I think it was called. And so
Wow.
everything that I wrote was in the newspaper. And I was kind of upset with my mom at first, like, how are you going through my stuff like that? And blah, 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 whatever. And so I didn't find out until one of my aunts told me, I didn't know you wrote something in the newspaper. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she showed it to me. So I still have that paper, that clipping too, out of the newspaper.
Wow.
So I decided to turn that into a children's book also.
Okay. All right. So we'll give mom credit for the inspiration behind that.
That's very true. And
Yes, yes.
and the last one and the very latest one is called He Said, She Said. Okay, let me make sure I put that right. So this is another thing that happened real life. Okay, so again, when I was married, my daughter was new coming onto the military installation,
Mhm.
and she went to the youth center, and she was new there. She spoke two languages. She spoke Japanese and English.
Okay.
And so this one little girl didn't like her, and she told everybody that she had said something. So one day I went to pick her up, and when we went outside, she just started crying. I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Daddy, these little girls, they're upset with me because they think I said something and I didn't say anything." I said, "Well, let's go back in here." So we went back inside, and the youth center director, I had her to call all the little kids in there, and I said, "Okay, why are y'all upset with her?" And so the one person said, "Well, the little girl, she says, she said something bad about us." I said, "Well, what did she say?" "Well, I don't know, but Jimmy told me she said such and such, right?" I said, "Okay, Jimmy, what did she say?" "Well, I don't know, but James told me she said this, that." And I said, "Well, what did she say, James?" I mean, we went all the way around until we got to this one little girl who, when it came to her, she couldn't think of what she actually said. I said, "What did she actually say?"
Mhm.
And there was no words for it. So this book is about how spreading gossip can cause problems. But then my daughter was very, very forgiving, and everybody said, "Will you forgive us?" And they said, "Yeah, we'll forgive you." What she said, "I forgive you." And so they was all friends again. So that was a lesson too that I just happened to remember that, and I
Mhm.
do a book. That's all.
Wow, what a lesson for the children as well, and the youth director who had no idea this type of thing was going on. But
Mhm.
those children could take that lesson throughout their lives because they knew early on to question, like, well, if she said something, what did she say?
Right,
And to try to get to the root of the problem before it gets so big. And
right.
just imagine, had you not gone back, what it would have been like for her the next day.
That's very true.
That was very proactive parenting, and I admire you for doing that because
Thank
so many times I stayed out of things. I just felt like, well, it'll work itself out. The truth will come out, and but I think what you did was the right thing to do.
you.
Definitely.
Appreciate that.
All right.
Mhm.
So what have you learned about writing as far as being an author and publishing, as well as I know a couple of experiences you've had, you work directly with the illustrator. So what have been some of your biggest aha moments?
Okay, well, um, it's going to be strange a little bit, but it's not as hard as one would think, but yet it's not as easy as one would think either. So I think the writing the story part is the easiest part for me. Okay. But when I work directly with my illustrator,
Mhm.
one of the things that was an issue was she's overseas and she speaks another language.
Okay.
So she speaks very good English, though, don't get me wrong, but there are times where we're trying to communicate and we don't quite understand each other.
Uh-huh.
So what I've learned to do is, and that's the difficult part of it, but what I've learned to do is I create a PowerPoint slide, and then I'll go to Google. Let's say, for example, with my last book, I went to Google and I said images of little girl crying, right? So when I saw these different pictures of a little girl crying, I went and I copied it and pasted it to a PowerPoint slide. And then I gave her notes. I said, okay, I want it to look like this. Then I went to the next thing. So basically, I did my own illustrations through Google Images from top to bottom. And I said, hey, make it look like this, but use these particular characters. Because currently I'm using what's called the Wiseman Series books. So I'm using the same characters, same little girl, same man, same little boys, like that. So I have her to come up with characters, new characters in some cases, and use that PowerPoint slide, and that kind of like helps us, to communicate. For me, just saying it to her is just not gonna get it. You know what I mean? So I have to work extra, I guess, to try to get her to see what I'm trying to say.
I certainly understand. And I've been there and done that as well with illustrators from around the world. And I think the marketplaces and the websites that lend themselves to that are phenomenal. I love working with all sorts of talents from across the world.
Right.
But in addition to that language barrier, you also have that cultural barrier as well. I remember when I was having a football player illustrated, and the illustrations came back and the knee pads were outside of the pants. That was a little bit of an issue. And then we got the car back and dad's on the right side driving and the little boy's on the left side. They're on the other side of the road, and that could work. But when you go to some schools, some children, they will tear that up.
Right,
They'll say, this doesn't make sense. What is this?
right,
They don't understand that. And so you want to minimize the differences as much as you can when you know what your typical audience is.
right.
So, and then it's a great learning experience because I pick up things from the illustrators as
Right.
well.
Hmm.
But in certain situations, being able to describe most vividly for them as best you can cuts down on the back and the forth, because some of the websites don't allow you to communicate orally with the person. There are no phone calls and that type thing. You
Right,
basically have to email and work through chats as well.
right, right. That's
That can cause delays and difficulty.
right. Very true.
Awesome, awesome. Well, you're correct in saying that the writing the story is probably the easiest part of it. It's the refining and making sure that it fits the appropriate audience, and then that the illustrations match, that everything lines up and makes sense, that, the sequence and all of that. But there is an art to it. And I think you have really, discovered that art, and you have a gift and a talent for telling these stories that are relevant for children.
Well, thank you.
Yes, and it looks much easier than it is, because people think that because children's books are short and to the point, that it's easy to do. But when you only have between 800 and 1,000 words to tell a story, you really have to whittle it down and revise and think of, what's not necessary? What can I kind of get rid of and still make the point?
Right,
So those are very important points that you've made.
right. Let me say this though. So I also let some of my friends read before I give it to you to look at. I let some of my other friends look at it, and this friend of mine, I was like, okay, so I was trying to let her know. I said, okay, we can't put every little thing in the book because I'll be paying $1 million for illustrations. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if the story says the little boy and little girl hugged and then they walked down the hall, she want me to show them hugging and walking down the hall. So I'm like, nah, we need to choose one because I got a limited amount of funds that I can use, and I'm paying an illustrator all this money for all these illustrations. You know what I mean? So I
Mhm.
said, we're gonna show them hugging or walking down the hall. One of the
That's
two.
true. And you make a very good point. And it's not all too about the budget for the project, it's the space. You only have, in most picture books, 12 spreads.
Right,
And there's no way to show every piece of the action, even if you have the bubble type illustrations where you have up here, he gets out of bed, over here, he brushes his teeth, over here, he combs his hair, then he gets breakfast. You can put all of that in different bubbles, but for the entire story, you'd be very hard pressed to get all of that done. So
be doing a cartoon. You know?
exactly, exactly. I remember my first children's book, one of the criticisms that someone said to me, she said, where is his hand? My granddaughter asked me that, and we're just like upset because like they felt like they bought the book and they were somewhat cheated because he didn't have a hand. Well,
Right,
he was getting dressed. So he
right,
was still pulling his sweater over his hand. And I understood it. I wasn't hard on the illustrator because I understood,
right,
it says here clearly he's getting dressed. So,
right.
it made sense, but they had a hard problem with that. They struggled with that.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I understand, and the feedback sometimes that you get is interesting, and you try to explain it as best you can, and then you move on.
Right.
Yes, so you said the Wiseman series. Right now there are 4 books. Will
Mhm.
there be more in this series?
Um, yes, I have like just off the top of my head, I think I have 3 that I'm ready to push the button on. Well, they're not ready to push the button on them. I just need to refine them and then it'll be ready. I mean, I have the ideas. I just need to add you know, to the main story part of it to it. Yep.
All right, that's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. I really am. Can
Yes.
you share, maybe some feedback that you've received? What type of impact, your books have received, like from some of the families that have ordered them?
Mhm. Well, they like the diversity because in my books, I don't just have black characters. I have black, white, Hispanic, just different characters, and they like that. Um, let's see, they like the fact that it's biblically based. They like that it's trying to teach, the biblical principles to little kids, and not only little kids, but some kids can't read and their parents read, so the parents need to hear some of it too. So those are the things that I mainly get feedback on. Yeah.
That's awesome. And that is something that I love about your book, like the cover of how do I know it's wrong? The classroom, they're
Right.
very diverse.
Right.
Even when there's a lighter complexion, you have different hair colors and, just different types of skins, and you make sure that that's represented in all of your books. So that is important.
Right.
And it is nice that there is scripture and there are biblical references, in each one of your books. So those are some strong attributes. And they're not just for children. There are, as you say, messages for adults as well.
Right. Very true.
Yes, yes. So what have I not asked that you might want to add, for our viewers to know?
Hmm. Um, let's see. What do I want to add? Can't think of anything right now. But if I
Oh,
think of it, I'll just interrupt you and put it in there.
that sounds like a plan to me. I will definitely add the purchasing link for each one of these books into the description for this video. I will also put your very nice website, a link for that there as well. And so if anyone wants to follow you, they can follow you on Amazon, they can follow you on your website. And
Right.
so I just hope that you'll have a lot of support because you have poured a lot into these books as far as your resources, your time, your talent, and your gift. And
Right.
they are very worthy of, people reading them and purchasing them and supporting you. And I
Right.
would like to say we're in spring now, summer is approaching. As churches, as youth departments plan summer programs, as they plan Bible schools, you
Hmm.
know, find and hit Mr. Dial up so that you can get copies for the children, have him come, talk to, interact with your children as well. That
Yeah.
would be a treat for everybody. And
Yeah.
so we ask that you will share this video, like it, subscribe to our channel if you're interested in publishing, HadassahsCrownPublishing.com. We'd love to hear about your story, what you are working on, what you are writing, and how we can be of assistance. We have self-publishing packages as well as coaching services, and we are here to serve. That's what we totally enjoy doing. We have a number of new books that will be hitting the bookshelf this spring, so stay tuned and know that we will be back with more. So, Mr. Dial, I know you're a very busy person, and I just appreciate the time that you've given us this afternoon.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
thank you for that.
Okay. Well,
And
one thing I want to add real quick. Um,
okay.
what I just recently start doing on my website is I have a tab for a gallery. And so I'm telling all the people that order the book, if you want to have your children or yourself or you and your children to be a part of my gallery, just take a picture and send it to my email and I'll upload it and put it in the gallery.
Oh,
Just take
wow.
a picture of you and the child reading the book or holding the book, however they want to do it, just include the book on there and I'll add them to the gallery.
Awesome. That's a nice way to encourage reading and family literacy and to highlight and spotlight those children who are enjoying the books. So, thank you for your commitment to the field of literacy, having children read as well as be better people, because we're living in a very dark world. But I will say that your books provide light and hope, and it's what we need. And so thank you. Continue in your services. And we greatly appreciate your contribution.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you again for interviewing me. Thank you to our audience. Thank you for following us and watching. And we appreciate your support of this author and all of our other authors as well. Thank you again.